So let me explain how we do a Sai Poc. Now a Sai Poc is just a high-level overview, a 35,000-foot view of a process map. It begins by identifying who our suppliers are, what they give us, which would be the inputs, how those inputs are then transformed, which would be our process. They're transformed into an output, and then finally, whoever consumes that output, which would be our customer. So here we have a Sai Poc: supplier, input, process, output, and customer. So let's work through an example. Let's say that we're going to perform a Sai Poc for a customer contact center. The way that I always produce a Sai Poc is by looking at our outputs first. So let's begin by looking at our suppliers. So the suppliers for our call center would be who is giving us the stuff to be able to perform our process. Well, the first thing that we could say is we could say that it's the telecom company. So I'm just going to write telecom. See if I could spell telecom. Right? So outside of the telecom company, is there anybody else that gives us something to produce our process? And we're going to say it's going to be some IT companies. Okay? So now that we know who provides us our stuff, we now need to understand what the stuff is that they give us. So this would be our inputs. So one of the inputs, perhaps, that the telecom company gives us is our phone connection. So we're going to write phone connection. Another input that they would be giving us would be our computer or our systems. So the actual computers that we use to process our calls. Maybe with that also we would get a headset. And then we'd also get maybe the server or the dialer, right? Because for making phone calls, we need to have a way to be able to make them. And then finally, maybe some sort of customer service or some sort of software. Now, using all of those inputs, we can then create a process. Now, with our process, this is not a process map, so it does not have to be incredibly detailed. I would recommend that your process steps in a Sai Poc be really no more than 5 or 7 steps. So we're looking at this from a very high level. So in terms of a process in a call center, and if I were the customer service rep, how would that begin? Well, it would begin by receiving the call or opening the call. So we're going to write open call. This is where they might say, hi, thank you for calling X company. My name is Dan. How can I help you today? The next part of our process would be we would have some sort of verification for the customer. So then there would be some verify. And then after we verify it, we're going to have to ask our customer probing questions. And then we're going to have to come up with some sort of resolution. And then finally, close the call. Because once we close the call, this entire process would start over again. So now that we know that our suppliers and our inputs are, and we know how those inputs create our process, what comes out of that process, right? Well, it could be multiple things. The output could be increased customer satisfaction, for instance. So increase customer sat. Or it could be a resolved call. Well then, who eats that? Who's the consumer of that output? Well, it could be the actual customer, right? Or it could be a new customer. But by being able to map out all of these items within our Sai Poc, it gives us a better understanding to define our problem. The improvement of a business process within an organization faces challenges all the time. Many times, the product or service has to go through various functions and their functional elements to reach the customer. Also, management of the flow of the products or services across various functional elements could be quite difficult. This image represents where the process owner and the stakeholders are placed within an organizational hierarchy. It begins with the process owner. Now, the process owner is responsible for the performance and the execution of the process. A stakeholder is defined as people or organizations who are affected by the process actions or its output. A stakeholder is defined as people or organizations who are affected by the process's actions or its outputs. From there, we have our stockholders, customers, suppliers, management, employees, and society, all of which could be a stakeholder. Failure to meet one or more process objectives may result in negative effects on the stakeholders. For example, an effect on a stockholder could be in the reduction of the perceived value of the company. To a customer, it may be that they will look into competitors to supply their goals or their services, or may even find any sort of legal recourse against you. Now, if we're talking about suppliers, they may face a delay in receiving their pay or non-payment. Management may require cost-cutting or layoffs, and employees may receive a diminishing wage. And finally, society could be impacted environmentally.